Okay, it being 6 o'clock, I'll call this meeting to order on June 3rd, 2024 of the Chelmsford Select Board, and notify everyone that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and also recording it for later rebroadcast. And if you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First up on the agenda is public service announcements, and the first one is about the parade, and we have at least a couple members of the parade committee here who are going to talk about the parade.
Good evening, Lynn Marcella from the Chelmsford Parade Committee. Our annual update on what's going on with the parade and all the activities relative to the 4th of July. I've got a few things to talk to you about, and then Sam will be introducing announcing our parade marshal and our hometown hero. So many members of this parade committee started back with the 350th celebration many years ago. Some have served almost 20 years, and we are always looking for new members, which you announce at every one of your select board meetings. We appreciate that, and we really would love to have some new members join, because some of us are getting on in age and would like to retire sooner or later. I would like to thank Paul Cohen and Pat Wojcik, who are liaisons to us for the parade committee. We would not be able to do it without their help, so we appreciate you both. Committee members include Candy and Sam Chase, Paige Gillette, Sean Hanaway, Jeff Hardy, Eric Lindstead, Chuck and Lynn Marcella, Kirk Marshall, Brian and Karen Reedy, and Rick Romano. I'd also like to thank the Chelmsford Police Department for all of their assistance with this biggest event in town. They arrange for our permits. We need a permit to have the parade coming down North Road. Also for closing 495. The security, the traffic issues, they handle it all for us, and we really appreciate it. In particular, thank you to Lieutenant Jason Poore and Chief Colin Spence. And I'd also like to thank the Chelmsford Fire Department for everything they do to help us. As you all know, they get quite a few fire trucks from different towns, and we expect them this year. And in particular, thank you to Ryan Houle. Thanks to the Chelmsford Department of Public Works for all of their help with erecting the reviewing stand, camera stand, making sure the lawns are all cut and beautiful in the center for the parade, and helping for road closures. And an early reminder, please don't put your chairs out too early. The parade committee used to hang all of the banners that you see in the center of Vinyl Square and Drum Hill, and thankfully the Department of Public Works has been hanging them for us now with a bucket truck. We used to climb ladders, and it got a little sketchy here and there, so we appreciate them doing them. We had a record amount of banners sponsored this year, which is awesome. Vinyl Square is pretty full, Drum Hill's full, the center looks awesome, and with the flags, it really looks great. We'd also like to thank Chelmsford Telemedia for all of their work in broadcasting the parade live, and they also show a lot of older parade programs from past years, and it's kind of fun to look back at them, and we appreciate all their work. We could not do all of the work that we do without these 4 outstanding departments in town, so again, thank you to them. I would love to thank parade sponsors, but the businesses and the families that have helped us, they're still coming in, so I don't want to miss anybody. We've got another month till parade, so it's not too late if you want to help sponsor the parade, because we don't get any revenues from the town. We raise all this money on our own, and it is quite extensive what we have to raise to hire all the bands and do everything that needs to be done. So we truly appreciate all these businesses and families for helping us. So the calendar of events for the activities are: Wednesday, there'll be a country fair sponsored by the Chelmsford Lions Club, and the Chelmsford Art Society will have their show at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. On Thursday, the day steps off with the John Carson Memorial Road Race, and that is sponsored by Sullivan Farms Ice Cream, and they have well over 2,000 runners, which is amazing. The Lions will have the country fair again on the Common. The art show will be still going on at the CCA, and the 56th annual Town of Chelmsford 4th of July parade will step off at 10 a.m. Finally, the parade committee has taken on something new this year. We are doing concerts on the Common every Saturday evening in July. So they'll be July 6th 13th, 20th, and 27th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free to everybody that wants to attend. We'll have food trucks and there'll be great music. So we highly recommend if you want to do something nice on a Saturday in July, just hope for good weather. And Sam, if you would help me out with.
Glad to help you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Sam Chase for the Chelmsford Parade Committee. As we do every year, we have a parade marshal who leads the parade, and we also have a designated hometown hero. So this year, our hometown hero is Mike Donahue. Mike is a lifelong Chelmsford resident, graduating from Chelmsford High in 1984. After working for the Chelmsford Water District for several years, Mike joined the Chelmsford Fire Department in 1993, attaining the rank of captain after 7 years. He was appointed deputy chief in 2010 and served in that capacity until his retirement last year after 30 years of selfless, continuous public safety service to Chelmsford. Mike also has served as a town meeting representative and continues to serve on the Permanent Building Committee and the town's Board of Assessors. Since 1985, Mike has proudly volunteered as a member of the Chelmsford Youth Baseball Board. You can thank Mike for the superb condition of the Chelmsford street fields, as he is responsible for their cutting and ongoing maintenance. So congratulations to Mike Donahue, this year's hometown hero. Now, this year's parade marshal is Dave McLaughlin. Dave is a longtime resident whose extensive finance and administrative executive management experience at Genzyme and Skyworks has served Chelmsford well on several important Chelmsford boards and committees. Dave's volunteer service includes 13 years as a town meeting representative, as well as terms on the Finance Committee, Personnel Board, Industrial Development Committee, Adams Library Building Committee, the 2010 Master Plan and Open Space Master Plan Committees, and the 2017 Charter Review Committee. But what Dave is most known for is his unprecedented 35 years continuous service on the town's Conservation Commission from 1989 to 2024. As the Commission's chair for many of those years, Dave was instrumental in guiding many generations of volunteers in applying state and federal conservation regulations to maintain the integrity of Chelmsford's conservation lands during periods of extensive development. The town will be forever grateful to Dave for his dedicated and selfless service in this most important area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have Evelyn Thoren to make the Arts and Technology Education Fund Awards for this year.
Good evening. Evelyn Thoren, Chair of the Arts and Technology Education Fund. Some people, I come before your board several times a year. For those that may be in the listening audience that doesn't know what the Arts and Technology Education Fund is, it was established in 1996. George Ripson and myself came before this board in January, and the Select Board, which was the Board of Selectmen at the time, approved to have it put on the warrant for the Springtown meeting, and it was approved in April of 1996. And then the committee started their work. We had made our first awards in 1997. And it is to enhance and supplement the new and innovative ideas, things that are creative for the Chelmsford staff, Chelmsford school staff. And it doesn't go into their budget, it doesn't become part of their budget, it is definitely very separate, and it has maintained that separateness over all of those years. But one of the ways that we've made ourselves accountable is for me to get up and explain to you what we're doing, and also the awards that we'll have this evening. I've listened to all the different thank yous for the graduation, and then every time somebody gets an award, I want to thank this person and that person. Well, I have my own few thank yous that are here to thank the town accountant and the town treasurer, because they've been very cooperative with any time I need any financial information. And of course, we always have the support of the town manager. We have, on our committee, we have Kirk Marshall, Carrie Miko, Hannah Barber, Elizabeth Hasty, Dr. Lang. By law, the superintendent of schools, has to be part of this committee. Teresa Evans, Candy Chase, And then there's Beverly Barrett and myself, who are the original leftovers of that committee from 1996. So we're still with the committee and still doing an awful lot of work. It's very exciting to have the applications come in and to screen them and to discuss things with those particular applicants. This year, one of the ways that we had received some funding, that usually it's by a tax checkoff on your excise tax bill or your real estate tax bill. This year, the family of George Ripsum, he had passed in April, had put it in that if people wanted to make donations in his memory, they could, and then they listed 3 different ones, and the Arts and Technology Education Fund was one of those recipients, and we did receive some money in memory of George this year. So if someone that's out there is looking at other opportunities to donate, there are a lot of committees in town, there's other types of charities that are in town that maybe your person was very much involved with or had kind of a leaning towards. And if Arts Technology Education Fund is one of them, we would welcome having any donations. We did have the town treasurer let us know because a lot of people were out of town, so we sent thank you notes to those individuals. But generally, we don't know who actually is donating. It's all anonymous donors. We also have other programs with the school system, and we've worked collaboratively and cooperatively with the school system over all of these years. So we have 3 awards that we will make this evening. So the first one is Mary Ellen Forty for fostering fine motor fun, and that benefits the CHIPS program. We're going to take some pictures because we know we have the website. We also have a Facebook page. There's different things. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. The second one is Angela Parks for walking pads. This benefits the students at McCarthy Middle School. And the last one is to Lucas Miller for orchestra, classroom instrument, and equipment. And this is for the McCarthy and Parker Middle Schools. Thank you very much. Now, does the committee have any questions of me about ATEF?
Oh, thank you so much for what you do for the ATEF. I'm sure it's well
We have a
appreciated.
committee, and they're working hard, and people are, we're spreading out all of the different responsibilities so that we actually can get more information out there to the general public. So it's great to have such exuberance among some of our newer members, too.
So thank you and congratulations to the award winners.
We
this
thank
evening.
again for all the support that we have from the town.
And for the remainder of our PSAs, we will hear from Erin.
So we have an announcement from the Chelmsford Health Department about their free Creative Connections program. There is registration required. It's for middle school aged youth and their parent or guardian on June 4th or June 18th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. And they will be creating a shared box or 2 individual boxes to be used for communication of needs, gratitude, well wishes, etc. between parent, guardian, and teen. Cute. And next we have an announcement from the town of Chelmsford about our municipal open house. This will be held at the Chelmsford Public Library on June 12th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and representatives from many boards and committees will be there to answer questions about what they do and how you can help and get involved in our municipal government. We have another announcement from the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. Karaoke Sober Edition is going to be held every second Friday of the month. The admission is free. And there are mocktails available for purchase and snacks, and that's 7 to 10 p.m. The Chelmsford's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is celebrating their 4th annual Juneteenth event on June 22nd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Chelmsford's Town Common. All are invited to join us in this commemoration of freedom and unity. In the event of rain, they will move to the Chelmsford Senior Center at 75 Groton Road. For more information, you can contact the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee or Carly Green. And we have an announcement from the Chelmsford Open Space and Recreation Plan. They're also holding an open house. This is a drop-in event where you can connect with people and organizations dedicated to enhancing our community's outdoor experience, learn about their processes, and how to stay involved through the project. There will be presentations and storytelling, open mic, activities for ages 1 to 100, fun and food, and this will be held on Thursday, June 20th from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Chelmsford Senior Center. And last but not least, we have a proclamation in recognition of Flag Day on June 14th, 2024. Whereas the national flag is a symbol of our great country, our heritage, and our place in the world, whereas the flag represents the highest ideals of individual liberty, justice, and equal opportunity for all, whereas the flag is a precious possession deserving the reverence and respect of all Americans, whereas the citizens of Chelmsford recognize the flag as a living thing, emblematic of our great nation. Now, therefore, we, the Chelmsford Select Board, do hereby recognize Friday, June 14th, 2024 as Flag Day and demonstrate our support of the national flag at this ceremony today. Signed this 3rd day of June, 2024. That's for you. It's both of them.
Thank you. And just a note on Flag Day, there is a public ceremony every Flag Day at the Garrison House at 4 p.m. Anybody that wants to come, and there's a scout troop that comes and does the run through of folding the flag and then unfolding the flag and raising the flag. Quite impressive. So 4 p.m. at the Garrison House on Flag Day. Okay, next up is public input part of the meeting. If you have anything you'd like to chat with us about, you have 3 minutes to do that. So, Mr. Regazio, you can kick us off.
My name is Paul Regazio, 6 Technology Drive. As you know, I was here 2 weeks ago, and in my haste, I forgot to mention something important regarding the Parker School funding. And again, I'm here with my friend Brian Latina. And again, what I was here 2 weeks ago was recommending that we do the funding for the Parker School from free cash, which I understand will be available this year. And one thing that I forgot to mention is I do have a warrant article issue signed by over 25 people, so to get my petition on the town meeting agenda for this coming October. So I want to thank you, and I will be presenting this tomorrow, I guess at your office tomorrow, Tuesday or Thursday. Brian may want to add something.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brian Latina, Precinct 9 Town Meeting Rep, and 15 Jesse Road is my address. I'm supporting Paul Regazio's warrant article that we use the $1.8 some odd million for the feasibility study for the Parker School rather than borrowing money for it. I understand that we get paid back if we do move ahead with a program and actually build a $300 or $400 million school, but it seems to me and the rest of folks that are concerned about it that we don't need to add debt to the town, and this would be a good way to kind of hand back some of the money that the town has now picked up from the state. I know that a couple of years ago we picked up another $1.9 million that we've not seen before. So this would be a way of actually funding it with current money on a current project. So I appreciate Paul coming forward with that. Secondarily, I have a couple of other topics I'd like to say if I have enough time here.
Sure.
Potholes on Turnpike Road, a couple of them are dangerous. We've gotten behind on that. I understand that this is the time of year that we actually go and start replacing chunks of road and prepping the road and that sort of thing. So we don't have enough personnel to take care of the normal potholes that pop up this time of year. There's several on my street that I hit or avoid swinging out across the yellow lines on a regular basis. When I worked at AGFA Corporation, we always had a meeting. Whenever we had a meeting, we had safety first conversations. There are dangerous potholes in our community that need attention. There are trucks that actually replace holes in the ground with pothole material. Some advertise up to 100 potholes per day can be repaired. I don't know if the current technology is still supporting that, but maybe it's something we should look into so our folks aren't standing on the highway in dangerous conditions. Second topic, or third topic I had was the Swain Road granite dust question. I know you're talking about that tonight. I saw some paperwork on that. Granite, my understanding, has a relatively high background radiation content, alpha, beta, and gamma rays. And in this situation where we're crushing rocks that normally are pretty well contained, I'd like to have the board understand that we should probably do some air tests, water tests, plants in the area, those residents near there. If alpha radiation is broken out in those rocks, the dust gets in the air, and you breathe it in, that's the most dangerous kind of radiation to have in your lungs. If there's any cancer rates in that area, it'd be interesting to contain that. I know the roads are very dusty there, so I'm going to say that dust does come out. So lung cancer sampling, water and air would be good. And then final is ADA requirements. We had some discussion about our planning board committee. They don't look at the ADA at the beginning of projects. They look at it at the very end. And speaking just as myself and having a handicapped son, I'd like to see the ADA requirements part of the planning board initial process so it's not so expensive at the other end. Project on the steakhouse down in the center was a good example where they did some changes that affect the ramp there. So I'd like to see that at the front end rather than the back end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that would like to make any comments to the select board at this time? And nobody on Zoom, Paul?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go next to committee vacancies, and while Aaron is reading those, if Senator Barrett and Representative Elliott want to come down and sit at the front of the room here.
We have the following committee vacancies as of June 3rd. The Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the Conservation Commission, the Commission on Disabilities, the Community Action Program Committee, the Cultural Council, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, the Historic District Commission, the Holiday Decorating Committee, the Parade Committee, Public Records Advisory Committee, Roberts Field Advisory Committee, and the Recycling Committee. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please complete an online application available on the town website, or you can contact the town manager's office for more information.
Thank you. So next on our agenda is, this evening is one of our regular meetings that we have with our legislative delegation here in person. We have Senator Mike Barrett and Representative Rodney Elliott. We have the staff member from Representative Simon Cataldo on Zoom, and unfortunately Representative Jim Rossaro could not make it this evening. So I know you've all received a note from the town manager about what we wanted to discuss. So I'll let you start first. So Senator Barrett, if you want to start with some of the topics that were on that list, and
Do you want to guide the list, Paul?
Sure. I mean, or maybe the most timely thing, Representative Elliott, would be the housing bond bill that was released today. And I know you filed an amendment to that, so if you want to just sort of give an
Oh, you're
overview.
very good.
Hey, we
That
try,
was at 4:51.
we try to stay on top of things. Go ahead.
Sure, I'm happy to. As the manager alluded to, this past Friday, we received notice at about 3 p.m.
Could you move the microphone so
Oh,
they can
sure.
hear you?
I think I would know that by now. Forgive me. So this past Friday, the House of Representatives received notice from the House Clerk's office that this coming Wednesday, the House will be deliberating and debating the $4.2 billion housing bond bill that this committee is well aware of. Many of the funding as well as policy riders in this bill. So today at about 12 o'clock, we received notice that amendments will be allowed to be filed. The deadline was today at 4:58. So I have been working with House Counsel all day. It was expected maybe, it's usually the day before, but that's fine. Working on language relative to accessory dwelling units that I know both the city of Lowell, of which I represent, as well as parts of the town of Chelmsford have some concerns. So in essence, the amendment that I filed relative to ADUs will, the title is local option, which essentially will put language, corrective language, I would say, into and replace some of the existing language that will allow, in this bond bill, accessory dwelling units by right, meaning those communities that have bylaws or ordinances, such as the city of Lowell, will no longer apply to ADUs by special permit, which is what the city of Lowell has, which is what the town of Chelmsford has. So that was filed today, just a little while ago, and as you mentioned, Mr. Manager, we'll be taking up the housing bond bill this coming Wednesday. So there are many, many amendments. I don't know how many. I'd say, well, maybe Mr. Paul knows.
300.
About 300 amendments to this bond bill. Some of them were relative to ADUs, but none of them included a local option where communities, it will not be by right. No one, and by the way, let me just state, I'm not opposed to accessory dwelling units. We have provisions in Lowell, and as long as I have served, I cannot recall the Zoning Board of Appeals, the regulatory board that provides and administers a special permit to deny. In fact, on occasion, I have gone to support ADUs and right in my neighborhood because of the need. But the compelling issue to me is all of those associated issues with zoning. I served as zoning chair on the Lowell City Council for many years, where we have gone through a laborious process to put in place zoning codes, zoning districts, requirements that allow us to maximize our housing and still provide all of the other amenities that, whether it's parking, et cetera, that residents have expressed their support for. So that being said, Housing Bond Bill Wednesday, I have filed that local option amendment, and I hope that it'll pass, and I will be speaking on it.
So Representative Elliott, there in the language that we received today from prior to your amendment on the House bonding bill, there was a specific statement that explicitly said basically municipalities can't have a local option, so your amendment would replace that language?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
That's correct.
Okay, I know
and by the way, I have been in conversation with the Mass Municipal Association, who supports this local option or some other versions, whether it's owner occupied. I believe there are two amendments on, a provision that accessory dwelling units be owner occupied. I understand that. I can just speak from our experience in the city of Lowell and in my neighborhood in particular. It's challenging to enforce, particularly I'll say in my district where I have the University of Lowell, where housing is also a premium for students. So, I can speak firsthand to occasions where, in-law apartments have been granted on an in-law basis, and then next generation decides they're not interested in the property and it sells, and it becomes a two-family. So, which is my concern, and I also think that there should be local jurisdiction, local oversight of these types of decisions in neighborhoods.
Okay, we did invite a member from the planning board to be here, since this is also a very hot topic for them. So Anita, you had your hand raised for.
Yeah, I just had a question. Maybe we can take a step back. What is the purpose of this ADU language? Like, what is the legislation what problem are you trying to solve?
I'll weigh in a little bit.
Sure.
But no, I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No. Well, it's part of the entire housing bond bill. It's to increase housing units across the state, similar to the MBTA zoning, where that law was adopted to increase and expand affordable housing, in those areas that have MBTA access. So, folks that probably can't afford a car or don't have access to a vehicle, that housing is being developed along mass transit lines. That's the word I was looking for. Senator?
Well, thank you, Representative Elliott, for taking such an interest in the legislation. The Senate has yet, first of all, I want to thank everyone for having us. Appreciate your inviting us from time to time to report. To try to address your question, I think everyone in general knows that there's a significant housing problem in Massachusetts. Almost an insuperable one. In other words, there's no way to overcome the shortage absent something dramatic, 2 or 3 dramatic steps. Anything that stays close to the status quo won't do the job. None of our kids can afford to live in the communities in which we've raised them. That's certainly true in my district. I represent 8 communities in all, stretching from Chelmsford to the north all the way down to Weston, right on the Mass Pike. Quite a cross-section of communities, including Carlisle and Bedford, Concord and Lexington, Waltham and Lincoln, Chelmsford, of course, and Weston. And everywhere you look, housing has essentially gone out of reach of young people. I don't need to tell you folks that the newspapers are full of reports about people leaving Massachusetts on net, in large part because they can't afford to live here. So to directly address your question, there is no way to get more housing into the state if you leave it to local option to the degree that Massachusetts typically has, because we have a track record of the last 50 years of local decisions. We know what the trend is locally, and everyone in our communities works in good faith. Everyone tries to make the best decisions they can by local priorities. Regional priorities can't really be addressed by local government because the focus by design is hyper-local, as local government should be. So the governor's come along and suggested several dramatic things so that my kids can continue to live in Massachusetts and so that your kids can as well. I do support the governor's position on ADUs. I do think they should be available as of right. I don't see anywhere in my district real alternatives to addressing the housing question otherwise, but I respect very much that people of goodwill are going to differ about this. I should mention that there is polling data, and, well, let me start by saying that I've heard from my constituents in Chelmsford and constituents throughout my district on ADUs. They are in favor of the governor's position. They're property owners, so as you can imagine, they want the additional flexibility for their properties. And they, so far, the mail we've gotten from across the district is pro. UMass did release a poll today of the entire state, overwhelmingly in favor of the governor's position. 66% are either strongly in favor of permitting ADUs as of right or somewhat favorable. The number of folks who are opposed to ADUs as of right statewide, 9%. 2% dramatically opposed, 7% somewhat opposed. There are some folks in the middle, about a quarter of the population, but 66% of Massachusetts is in favor of these things because we don't have any other options. Every community in my district has a good reason, and I'm not being, I mean a good reason why they would love to help but cannot do this as a matter of right, because they're concerned about having to build an additional school. They're concerned about septic systems. They're concerned about sewerage. Everyone considered by themselves has a legitimate position. The sum result, though, across Massachusetts is very little housing. So we're forced, because we failed. We failed as a collection of 351 municipalities to somehow do the job one town or city at a time. We've tried for 100 years, 50 years or so, we've been focused on housing. it hasn't worked. Charlie Baker, Republican, suggested the transportation-oriented development thing, arrangement, which was very controversial. Maura Healey, a Democrat, has suggested ADUs as of right, also very controversial. Neither one of them is interested in angering or disrespecting town government. But local control of this particular regional priority has failed. And so all of us are against the wall. I take seriously myself the fact that Massachusetts' economy is at stake and that the economy will be seriously hurt if we lose young workers. And we are losing them. We're one of the oldest states of the 50 states in terms of average age of population. Young people just can't find a place to live. ADUs, the track record for them indicates that they are used very slowly. Theoretically, there's a build-out that one can always calculate for a given community. That never happens. Most ADUs, in the end, there are special circumstances for college towns, but most ADUs are used by family members. The typical pattern, as you all know, is mom and dad grow older, they become empty nesters, they want to accommodate their kids and grandkids, they add an ADU, move into the smaller unit, the kids move into buy the larger unit, and the grandkids have a place to go to school. That's what really happens. Nothing close to the maximum build-out occurs. So if I had good ideas, better ideas, I would like to offer them because I can appreciate that this is disconcerting for people. But my constituents, including constituents in this town, are for ADUs. Town governments have serious misgivings. Townspeople tend to be supportive because it's their property that we're freeing up, and they've got kids and grandkids who can't find places to live.
Senator Barrett?
So on balance, thanks. On balance, I'm even though it's a tough one, and I respect folks who may disagree with me, but on balance, I'm going to be with my constituents on this issue.
Okay, Virginia?
In our discussions, I honestly don't think anyone was opposed to the scenario that you laid out, where families allow their children to come in, and children can eventually move into the larger structure, the parents can move in. And locally, we allow that today. And
Not as of right.
Special permit.
Yeah, so
But
that's
I don't know
a
that it's,
sticking point.
so where I think where the bigger concern comes in is when you're now allowed, when the opportunity for ADUs becomes an opportunity for developers to maybe start buying out parts of neighborhoods and creating, homes with ADUs, or where a homeowner is now turning a home in a single-family neighborhood into an investment property with an ADU that's now going to be rented out with a long-term lease. That's where the concern, the main concerns come from, not at all in the scenario that you laid out, where it's, families trying to help take care of their children and the future generations.
Well, thank you. I think you raise a good point. I'm for ADUs as a matter of right. But when the amendment comes up to limit it to family members, I think there may be constitutional problems, to be honest with you. But when the amendment comes up to limit to family members, I think that's going to be a healthy discussion. In Lowell, of course, it wouldn't work, to Representative Elliott's point, because they've got a lot of kids, college kids, who need a place to live at the University of Lowell. So I think there may be instances where that doesn't work. The key thing here.
And the Lowell Planning Board's concern was also related to the size of the lots in Lowell, not being able to
Okay,
sustain.
I think we can keep it related to Chelmsford. We don't,
But I
Lowell's-
also, can I just do a follow-up?
Okay, let's wait and see if anybody else on this board has anything to add to this part of the discussion.
Are you finished, Virginia?
No, but if Pat wants to interrupt me, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Okay, does anybody else on the select board have anything to add to this discussion?
I'm just concerned about the number of people allowed, and, is there
You can
a
speak to
ceiling
them.
on the number of people? Is it
What's
two
that,
people?
George? I'm sorry.
2 people, 3 people, 5 people? If you're in a college town, you'll have to get 5 or 6 kids back. You know,
Well, I don't know about I'll let, the family thing, you know, is of course what we think about mostly. And there you would be talking typically about two parents and maybe two kids. So that's 4 folks right there. Representative Elliott, yeah.
Is there anything in the law?
It just limits it to 900 square feet, the accessory
Yeah,
unit.
it doesn't say
That would,
anything
that
about
would
the
limit,
number.
that would limit occupancy
You
in
could
some
have
extent.
20.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Not, 900 or the
square
smaller
feet.
number if it's a smaller house or something.
Okay,
No, there's no limit on the number of individuals. It's just, it's maximized at
I
900
think
square
that
feet,
would be,
which is significant.
I would be a concern of mine if for the town or anywhere else.
Let me just say, the city of Lowell went through an exhaustive process. I can tell, I can't speak for, well, I can speak for Chelmsford, because I think Chelmsford is deliberating in a similar fashion, and it continues. There's a planning board meeting 21st relative to this. So, but just to speak to the law, we went through an exhaustive process for several years, quite frankly. And, the reason why zoning is complex is because land use is complex. It's governed at the state level, it's governed at the local level. And, coincidentally, to speak to Senator Barrett's point, his constituents, perhaps, it really feeds to support the reason why there should be a local option. Because if the constituents in his district support this, then they can adopt that by right. They don't need a bylaw, they don't need an ordinance, which Lowell and Chelmsford has. And so that really feeds into why I think there should be a local option. Some communities may favor it, some communities not. The city of Lowell resoundingly rejected it. And this was, again, I'm repeating myself, after an exhaustive process. And I know, and the college, the college issue is, that's just one issue. There are so many more. And the issue of affordability, we went through a discussion during this process in Lowell where if you look at the cost of construction for a 900 square foot ADU with a kitchenette and bathroom, it's prohibitive to be affordable. What you're going to have to invest, as well as any potential rent that you may gain from that. So it's really a misnomer. Do we want to help people that need? Yes. We simply ask that there's a permit process, that you notify your neighbors, that you satisfy requirements to be amenable to the neighborhood, and your neighbors have a chance to come and speak. I don't think that's asking too much. If there are some communities that restrict it and they say no, I do understand the senator's point and the governor's point. However, I think that's part of the process when it comes to zoning, or quite frankly, with anything. So I don't think we want to turn this into a debate. We can agree to disagree, and we'll take a vote. But by no means is my amendment for local option in opposition to ADUs, because I do feel there is a need at the appropriate time in the appropriate place with conditions that are regulated on the local level, who, in my opinion, and no deference to the state level, knows how to administer best. We know the neighborhoods.
okay,
If I could just make
Okay,
one thing,
you
and then
can-
I do want to
no.
hear from from
Okay,
you all.
if you could, I am the chair,
I'm sorry.
so I'll tell who can speak next, so go ahead, Senator Barrett.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and I want to acknowledge that. I would just say that this is not, ADUs are not an affordable housing initiative. They are a housing initiative. This is not being advertised any more than transportation-oriented development was as a measure to encourage affordable housing. This is a measure to house your kids and your grandkids. And presumably, they're going to pay, in many cases, market rate for the square footage involved, or more likely, grandma and grandpa are going to move into the unit and sell the larger unit to their family members. So this is about increasing the total number of housing units in Massachusetts. Some of the stuff will be affordable, but this is not federally subsidized, income eligible, affordable housing. And of course, as we know, it's not public housing as we understand the term, and because that's the province of housing authorities locally. This is market rate housing. We need more units, and as a practical matter, single-family home zoning in the suburbs has made it impossible now for our kids and grandkids to find places to live. And that's been true increasingly, as I say, for a half century, but now it's reached the point where we're losing population and other states are gaining it. If we lose our young workers, there aren't going to be any restaurants. You know how it works. There aren't going to be any service employees. We're going to have a lot of retirees struggling and not enough folks to provide us our health care, provide us our public safety, provide us our teaching in our local schools. So we need young blood. It's not an affordable housing thing. I apologize, Madam Chair, for going on, and I do look forward to hearing from the board.
Okay, and I do too, and I do want to make it clear, we're not here to go back and forth. We're here to give our opinions to the representative, the legislative delegation, and for them to tell us how they feel about it. We don't need to have a back and forth. But I do want to hear from the other members of the board. Pat, I think you started to say something.
Yeah, I guess I'll respond basically to your comments just now. So if this is truly about my children being able to live in this town, then what's the problem with a local option?
It's not
I mean-
just your kids, it's also the kids who live in Carlisle and the kids who live in Bedford, or the Lowell. Obviously, we're a region.
And as parents, we all want to stay close to our families and such like that. But
Yeah.
but I see this. I recall back to the early days of 40B. And I think back to the cost of properties and if I'm a 40B developer, the more that property costs, the better off it is because I increase my profit margins. Not saying that this is necessarily heading that way, but there's a myriad of things that are going to develop out of a program like this that is going to be negatives. And to sit here and say that local governance has not done their job in the past 50 years or 100 years, when you're trying to protect your community and all the rights that go with it is a little disturbing. So, if it's not about affordability and it's really just about housing units, why aren't we giving tax breaks to all these empty office buildings throughout the city of Boston and Burlington and Chelmsford and other places like that? And I just don't think that laying it on the backsides of local community homeowners is the way to go about fixing the housing crisis. I don't deny there's a housing crisis in Massachusetts and everywhere else in this country. This is not the way to go about it.
Okay, Erin, any comments?
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of the things that Pat said. The affordable housing conversation in general, I grew up in a 3-decker in Worcester, right? My parents were kind of the American dream, like they wanted to have kids. They bought a 3-decker because that's all they could afford. They used the rental income to eventually buy a single family. And I grew up, they at one point owned a few in Worcester, and I watched them rent them out. At one point, I rented them out for them in my 20s. I followed the rental market for years. I was a real estate agent for a brief period. I have some experience here, and these conversations are really hard. The affordable housing conversation, I think Chelmsford and other towns around us also are seeing things happen. Like we have a 400 apartment complex going in. 50 of those units will be affordable, right? But that means there are 350 of them that are really unaffordable. 3-bedroom units are $4,300 a month is the market price. I don't know who can afford that. When one of those buildings goes in, people like my father and with their 2 families or their 3 families or whatever, look at that and say, well, if they're renting a 3-bedroom apartment for $4,300 a month and I'm only charging $1,500, I'm going to up my rent. So the rent goes up everywhere because of that. And all those ADUs that you're talking about, they will do the same thing. Those people that have an ADU on their house that they can rent to non-family members, when the rents go up, their rent goes up too. And I'm sorry, $2,600 a month for a 1-bedroom studio, which is the market rate that's given by the state, is my impression, is not affordable. And you're talking about your kids and college kids that need places to live. And a college kid paying $2,600 a month for a studio apartment does not put them ahead in life. It keeps them poor, and it keeps them from creating a down payment for their own property, which is the biggest hurdle to homeownership, right, is coming up with that down payment. People that are spending that much money on rent every month can never come up with a down payment. So, I just think it's a little bit of a cat chasing their tail for young people, for middle income families. There are no good options. And for every 50 affordable units that you create for the thousands of people that are on the waiting list, that are going to be on the waiting list for 5 or 8 years, there are 350 that are created that are completely unaffordable. And I don't know that the benefits outweigh the costs, not only to the town, and we talked about the pressures that it creates on the town, but to kind of some of those middle income earners and to the young people who don't qualify for affordable housing and then can't afford anything because the market rate is what it is. And frankly, maybe you can clarify on this, I don't really understand why the market rate is what it is. I don't know what the data is, where that data is coming from. I know that there are apartments renting in Worcester still for $1,500 a month for 3 bedrooms. So the market rate being $4,300 from the state database seems incredible to me, particularly in a town like Chelmsford, which is not Worcester. I mean, we are a much smaller municipality, so it's.
I'll ask the chair if I can say something, but it's up to you.
Sure, if you could keep it brief, sure.
So actually, I have Worcester roots myself, so I hear you in terms of where you're coming from, and I have 2 34-year-old twins, one of whom rents, one of whom purchased a house recently in Malden, Massachusetts, with a little help from her parents. So I hear you. But it is a matter of supply and demand. The only way to bring down those average costs, because the state rate isn't set by the state, it's just a survey of private transactions. The only way to bring down the cost of those private transactions is, unfortunately, to increase supply or to see demand drop because nobody wants to live here. If that's the choice, then I'm committed to increasing supply.
Pat, can I?
But does it ever occur at the state level that some of these processes, some of the potentially negative consequences that could come out of setting that market rate that high is that you are essentially raising the rate for everyone else?
We don't set the rate. There is no setting of the rate. It's private transactions that average out very high. There is no rate set by the state. And I'm concerned to correct that misimpression.
Okay, Virginia first. Go ahead.
Just, again, I want to say that philosophically, I agree with everything you said about taking care of our families and our generations. I think I'd ask you to understand, too, that the letter that this board provided to our legislators and that our planning board provided to our legislators is representative of feedback that we're getting from our constituents here in Chelmsford. It's not us just acting out on our own. And I would really ask that as this bill progresses through the legislature, that you keep a very careful eye on the language so that the end result isn't that it becomes a heyday for developers and a heyday to ruin single-family neighborhoods and a heyday to overpopulate very small lots. So that's my request, that if the intention is to take care of families and generations, let's make sure that that's how the language is written and that it's not opening up bigger doors that I
Fair
think
enough.
could really be
That's
disastrous.
a good point. Thank you. And I think Representative Elliott and I would agree that you're making a good point.
Okay.
Yeah, that it's not just a streak
Okay,
for that
it's
end
Anita's
number
turn
of
now.
So I've got
units.
serious concerns about this. I don't think you're solving your problem here at all. I don't think adding ADUs is going to solve our housing crisis. In fact, I think it's going to make it worse. I think it's going to make affordability worse. And let me tell you why. First of all, the reason why our prices of houses and rentals are through the roof, first, all our jobs are in Boston and on 128. So that makes the demand for Boston, the Seaport District, and all those communities that are within 15 miles, the demand is high. You want you want housing and affordability to be more reasonable and have our kids live here, the state needs to stop being planning board and start focusing on driving businesses up to Lowell, out to Lawrence, out to Worcester. Plenty of room in Worcester for development. We used to have manufacturing. That left. If you remember when Wayne was here, we used to get everyone from Nashua coming down. We charged them income taxes, and we didn't have to put in the infrastructure. It was a win-win. We didn't have to send their kids to school, but we got to charge them income taxes. Same with Lawrence. Now we focus in the last 30, 40 years, we focused on Boston, the Seaport District. And the Seaport District's beautiful. We've done a phenomenal job. Absolutely great. But guess what? Getting from Chelmsford to work in Boston, because I've done it my entire life. 25 years ago, a normal commute from East Chelmsford, so I get on Treble Cove Road in Billerica, as opposed to other people in North Chelmsford, it would take, and I'm talking 25 years ago, would take me under an hour to get to the Back Bay 101 Huntington Ave. Now, if I want to do that same commute, on a good day, it takes an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
Right? And most normal days, it'll take you an hour and 45 minutes. Now, I live in East Chelmsford. You might as well say I live in Billerica because I get on in Treble Cove. Anyone else in Chelmsford who lives, even Chelmsford Center, close to North Chelmsford, you're adding another half hour. So you can add all the housing you want. Your kids are not going to stay here if they have to drive 2 hours each way to get to work. The reason why our housing prices are through the roof is because other communities, like Lexington, Concord, Lincoln, Dover, Carlisle, they have no FAR. So a developer can go in and build a McMansion. And why wouldn't they? Because for incremental costs, they get triple the margin back. Chelmsford hasn't done that. In fact, we've encouraged duplexes. So most of our development, I can walk you through our RC unit right outside this window, how many we've converted from single family to duplexes. Because we've encouraged that, and we've done that. And that's why Chelmsford prices, our home prices, have remained relatively low compared to the other communities. So if you want to fix this and encourage it, there are ways to do it. All this does, and you can sugarcoat this, put a bow on it, and tell me, oh, it's for generational living, oh, it's for this or that. That's not what this is. This is for developers. The way this bill is written today, and what you're trying to do,
I strongly disagree.
Will only help developers.
Believe me, and I think Representative Elliott would back me up. This has not been written for developers.
Okay, well then you need to go through it with someone with a financial background and really think.
Many of us have financial
and really
background.
think about it, because an individual, it's a young couple who wants to get a home and say, okay, let me go and build an ADU. Well, their interest rates are a lot higher to borrow for that construction loan than a developer. So how the hell are they ever going to outbid a developer? They won't. So when someone's looking at hey, mom and dad, why don't we all go together and we can buy a house and then we can build a 900 square foot ADU unit and we can all live together and we can live generational. Let's go do them. We go to bid. Guess what? Guess who's going to get outbid? They'll get outbid. So you've got the way this is written, the developer is the only one that's going to win here. So I ask you to really scrub this and really think about how this is written, because that is what is going to happen. You've also had 40B for 40 years. Has that worked? Do we have affordable housing? No. So
We have more than if we didn't have that law.
really, because how many towns are compliant in Massachusetts?
My district, I represent 8 communities. The majority of my towns comply. They've met their 10%. We're talking about Lexington, Concord, Lincoln, Weston, Bedford have all met their 10%. So yes, it's been a very unpopular law. Nobody loves it, but it's worked. ADUs will work too, but it will remain unpopular, I predict, if it becomes law. It will both do the job and cause a lot of stress for you guys. Don't get me wrong. This is hard. This is hard. To your point, you can't sugarcoat it, but if we had easier ways, the jobs are in Greater Boston. I was around when we built Route 3. widened it. I was around when we built 495 in order to make sure the jobs weren't centered in Boston. But the market is something that state government doesn't run.
Really?
It doesn't control.
Because then I suggest you look at the country of Australia.
So the problem is the
see how
young
they
people want to
Okay,
live in
if we could kind of put a stop to this.
But I can give you examples of how government can incentivize businesses to go out, and I'm happy, and I really,
The private market, though, is
Okay,
paramount here.
okay,
Okay.
that's
and then I
enough.
just want to bring up
Okay,
one point.
Anita, please stop.
I just want to bring up some points on the density, because you mentioned Lincoln, Carlisle, you mentioned Concord, I believe. So the other issue I want to mention is regarding density. First of all, affordable 40B. Me and my husband both work. We make very high incomes. People would put us at the very top. I still can't afford to live in Lexington. I can't afford to live in Lincoln. So the 40B really hasn't worked. Because affordable is not affordable for me in this time. However, when you look at towns and density per square mile of how many housing, why are we focusing on communities that are not dense? Like, instead of just making this blanket across the state, and again, I think this kind of goes to the option, local option. This is why, again, I don't think what you're trying, like, I understand what you're trying to do, and I appreciate what you're trying to accomplish, but this is my fear of it. You're going down a path that can really turn ugly for the citizens of the state. And while you're trying to fix one problem, you may be causing a lot of other problems. There are areas that are very close to Boston, Carlisle, Dover, Lincoln, Weston, Concord, who have extremely low density. They have a lot of extra open space. So if we want to lower and increase density and increase houses, then let's do it strategically. And I'm not pointing them out because, Lexington or Lincoln, you and not me. I'm not trying to do that by any means. But when you look at this, you need to look at holistically and look at the quality of life.
Okay, Anita.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sorry.
everybody's made their point. I think we're starting to make our points over and over again. We know how they feel. They know how we feel very clearly.
Madam Chair, do you have anything to add?
I didn't want to take up time from anyone else.
You should also, yeah.
I mean, I agree. I mean, it's, in theory, it would be good if it could generate some more affordable housing, some even market rate housing, but I think the way it's written, it needs some adjustments. It needs more study. That's just my opinion, and I think you know the areas. I'm not going to say them again. You know what they are very clearly. Are
you done? Okay. I didn't know you were.
Want to interrupt me?
trying to interrupt you, Pat. I thought you were done. I was raising my hand.
Sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
I was raising my hand. No, I think one of the disappointing things when I read the bill today, and this is a different tangent, so I'm not, because I don't want to get repetitive. You said, Representative Elliott, you noted there's a $4 billion bill. The $2 billion of it is to expand the MWRA down to the South Shore and to the Ipswich River Valley. It didn't expand it up to Chelmsford or this area. And I think that's very frustrating because apparently and I'll just say what it is, the speaker has a pet project in Weymouth, okay? And therefore, in the legislation, the funding provided the expansion of the MWRA to that project in that area, as well as the Ipswich area, left out this area of the state, which was originally part of what was called for the expansion, so we didn't just dream this up. And then again, they chose to fund the water option, not the sewer option. So again, Chelmsford and other communities are going to bear the cost to expand the MWRA expansion in the future, because I expect it'll pass the House, perhaps the Senate, and signed by the governor. So the generation ahead is going to fund the expansion of the MWRA network to the South Shore, to the Ipswich area. Meanwhile, Chelmsford sits here, can't do anything because we don't have the sewer, but yet we're going to somehow have to deal with the MWRA lack of resources to our community, but yet not having the sewer capacity, we're going to have to deal with the ADUs, but not have the sewer infrastructure to address the housing needs and other economic development needs of the community. And I just think it's just blatantly unfair because it didn't say we're going to fund utility expansion. It said we're going to fund what it says it's going to fund. And it left Chelmsford and other communities at the curb without anything for addressing the sewer infrastructure, which, as you know, is a valid, it's not an excuse, it's a valid reality, because it not only affects Chelmsford, it affects Lowell, it affects Tingsboro, it affects Drake and Tewksbury, and it's just baffling. I shouldn't say baffling. It's just disappointing to see the infrastructure needs of Chelmsford in terms of the sewer issue left on the side of the road in this effort of funding. And it's just, I don't know how to explain it other than what I read and what the speaker has said is basically he really wants to fund the re-examination of the South Weymouth Air Base, and that's really a priority. And I just think it's, again, you wonder why people get upset. It's because of this lack of a level playing field. And I just think that's a real issue. And we know that the Lowell wastewater plant has been over capacity twice in the last 6 years, so we know it's not a fiction. We also know that the city, as you know, Representative, has a consent order to address sewer infrastructure because we're dumping millions of gallons of raw sewage into the river. But again, no means to address the sewer reality of the greater Lowell area.
Mr. Manager, you're speaking to the choir. This is the third consent decree that the city of Lowell is under, and I couldn't agree more when it comes to infrastructure and the need and the funding need. But just to speak to your point, and you know, it's also a federal issue. But this, I understand your point with, you know, with this bond bill and funding for the MWRA. But Madam Chair, just to speak to this point, I don't disagree, but there will be no more studies. This vote on Wednesday will either determine whether their ADUs are going to be allowed by right, or if my local option amendment passes, communities will continue to have the right to evaluate and issue a special permit. I don't think that's unreasonable. You know, ADUs are not going to solve the housing crisis, and I do think that it's quite interesting where you know, Senator Barrett, his point mentions we have people leaving the state, yet we continue to have an affordable housing crisis. There's a crisis because people want to stay here because there's an excellent education system. Our neighboring states or other across the nation do not provide the services that we provide. And whether it's K through 12 or higher education, there is a labor pool here. There are jobs, companies, I can tell you, they're going to the Seaport, they're going to Kendall Square, they're going 128, they're coming to Lowell as well because there is a labor pool. So, you know, there's been a need for housing, 200,000 housing units for a long time. I just ask in my amendment to allow that the local municipalities have some control, because whether it's developers or individuals, it will be a free-for-all. Lowell is 13.4 square miles. We have 115,000 people living there. There are 25,000 units. I sit on the Lowell Housing Authority. There is a waiting list of 6,000 people. We have 5,100 public housing units in Section 8. We are doing all that we can. However, there will be developers that will come in, and whether it's for education or to make money or just through generational changeover, this needs to be regulated, in my opinion. Maybe not in some of the other communities that haven't adopted this. And whether it's Chapter 40B, we have exceeded, we didn't just say, oh, we hit our 10 and we're done. We keep developing our affordable housing. We adopted the MBTA zoning because we know we want to help people and we can. However, ADUs is not good for the communities that I represent. There needs to be regulatory oversight. And I'll finish with this. When we started talking about ADUs, it was a discussion throughout the city, and quite frankly, most residents, perhaps even to this day, until it directly affects them, until there is a notice that they receive as an abutter, really don't understand accessory dwelling units. You can ask. So, those folks, I appreciate the information on polling data. If they say, yeah, of course we want to help, we want to be in favor of in-laws or helping our kids, absolutely. However, the long-term effect, and I'll just say very densely populated areas or others, is going to be significant, because the intended consequence will be, I would say, kind of unintended consequence will be, there's no regulatory oversight. I just don't think it's a good thing. That's the reason why if the local option.
Okay, I think we have beat this topic to death, quite frankly. We've been here like 45 minutes already. We have many other things on our list that we wanted to talk about. I think some of them we'll get through in a little bit more pleasant manner, I hope, than what we have just experienced. So if anybody has a last word, but it has to be a last word.
I just think last word, you should take credit and acknowledge the amendment you Representative Cataldo and Representative Arciero filed for the Chelmsford Housing Authority.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, before we leave this, because I think it's good news.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, with it, we filed an amendment for $6.5 million in this bond bill to provide funding for the
units
center.
on Smith Street.
For the units on Smith
basically
Street.
the Housing Authority, just to let people know watching this, that David Hedison, the Chelmsford Housing Authority, the units at 1 Smith Street, right at the intersection, are at the end of useful life. They're basically obsolete. They cannot be renovated. There's 64 senior housing units there. David Hedison has a project that's $43.5 million to move forward. He'll be appearing before the CPC in 2 weeks to request funding from the Community Preservation Fund as seed money for that project, which would then go to fall town meeting. But in addition, when the bill came out today, Kyle Stapleton's on the line on the Zoom from Representative Cataldo's office. They reached out and said, is there something available for the town in terms of the amendments to the housing bond bill that's beneficial and significant and realistic? And I said, well, by chance, let me forward you David Hedison's presentation that is going to the Community Preservation Committee, and basically, as Representative noted, they had like a few hours to get this in this afternoon, and so they've submitted an amendment of one of the 300 amendments to the bill to provide funding to support that project. So again, the end of the day would be 64 deteriorated units that are two-story that you see at the corner of Stedman and Smith Street. Those will be raised, and then they'll be replaced with three-story units of 96 units, again, which would add, obviously, additional units. And it would also, because of the legislature's efforts, that would actually be a 40B project, because the Housing Authority would transfer the units to its nonprofit affiliate. So not only would it add the units, but also it would increase the town's capacity under 40B, because as you know, we're right at the cusp of the 10%. So again, I just wanted to give the opportunity to recognize Representative Cataldo, Arciero.
And did Mr. Stapleton want to make
Is there anything you want to add to that, Kyle?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank you, Mr. Town Manager, for taking my call at the 11th hour there and providing us with that information. We're definitely hopeful that we can get that through, and we'll definitely provide the board with any updates after the vote on Wednesday as to where that funding stands.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to thank the board.
Well, we're not letting you go yet.
Oh, okay.
That was on one topic.
Well, let me just say that I do appreciate the frankness of the conversation we've just had. People can disagree, but do so agreeably, and I hear you all. I do want to reiterate that my constituents are supportive of the governor's position, but I hear you guys too, and it's one thing that people can disagree about without becoming disagreeable.
Right, and I'm really doing my hardest to wrap this topic up and move on to the next one.
Can I go?
You can go. Is that what you mean, go?
Yes, can I go?
Yes.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, so I'm going to run out of here.
Okay, so There is, I think, since we're talking about specific legislation, Representative Elliott, there were some bills that you had filed on behalf of the town, one of which I think would just pass the legislature today, about the deputy fire chief not being under civil service anymore, so thank you for doing that. We hope the governor signs that. If you want to speak to the other,
Well, now it goes to the Senate.
No, the Senate enacted
Oh,
it
the
today,
Senate
too.
enacted,
It's on the
okay,
Senate,
yeah.
on
So-
the governor's
Give me
desk
some
now.
credit,
Thank
Paul.
you, Senator Barrett.
Thank you. So let's hear it.
Senator, you might, I don't know if Senator's pressed for time. He has more communities than I do, so
oh, okay.
if you want to go ahead.
I mean,
No,
we'll try to-
we are pleased that we got that bill through.
Okay, we'll try to keep this to another, 10 or 15 minutes, so we don't
Okay, good,
keep you
yeah.
here too late.
Thank you.
Sure, I can be brief on two items that were on the agenda. East Richardson Road, which coincidentally today I met with NEMCOG relative to, and they have a public hearing Wednesday night, Madam Chair, I know you participate, to have that intersection of East Richardson Road and 3A or Princeton Boulevard evaluated for hopefully a traffic study of some, even if it's a traffic count, et cetera, et cetera. I will say that the tip for Vinyl Square, as you know, is part of it, will be funded, I believe, 2026, if my memory serves me correctly.
I think it's a little later than
Yeah,
that, but that's close.
I
yeah.
thought I thought it was a little bit later, and I stood corrected.
I think that might
but-
be the add date, maybe the 26th, and then 27 possibly constructed. But anyway,
So that's still positive news, and I mean, we know that the sidewalk is under construction. I know I saw some emails about that as well. Ledge Road is still in the Committee on Transportation. It's one of 4 bills that there was a request from the chair to be able to hold on to and not report out until July 1st. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I hope that's a positive sign, because as we know, bills are reported out, correct me, Senator, first week of March. So there's a reason why, in my opinion, and I've reached out to the chair to issue, hopefully issue a favorable reporting. So it's still in the committee. So those are the bills. Any other
we
bills?
I wanted to bring up too about the environmental type issues, the expanded bottle bill, the deposit on that, maybe about NIPS, things like that.
I think the Senate may well try to expand the bottle bill, and we did hear you. Thank you for being in touch on the NIPS issue. So I have drafted I do climate policy for the state Senate, and I took a personal interest in making sure that there'd be an expanded bottle bill, essentially more containers covered, pop the nickel up to a dime, but we made sure to define beverage so that it would encompass the small containers, NIPS, which around certain areas, especially around package stores, tend to be real problems.
Right. And I know there are several communities that have banned them individually, but that's, it's kind of ironic that there are some issues that the state wants to take overall control of, and then there's some they want to push back to the community.
Well, in this one, I agree with you that there ought to be a statewide incentive, basically, to keep NIPS off the ground and so they don't constitute litter. And we're doing our best. I can't predict how the Senate's going to go. The bottle bill doesn't have a lot of legs in general. It lost a referendum in 2012. I think that was a long time ago. So I think we ought to take another run at it. But that has been an obstacle that the bottle bill has had to overcome. 14 years, I think we should give the public another opportunity to express its will. I have a lot of support in my district, including in this town, for an expanded bottle bill.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely, expect that to be the case. We try to do any effort, any initiative we can.
Chelmsford is terrific on environmental and open space issues in general, including on the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else anybody wanted
Last
to?
one was the underground utilities.
Oh, yeah, the underground utilities, our favorite topic.
Yeah, this is sort of a 30-year saga. The town aggressively, meaning they adhered to state law, passed local bylaws, and we were able to fund the first phase of the underground utility project around the town common.
Yes, right, sure.
The problem with it is the legislative is antiquated because the funding source for Verizon is landline revenues.
Is what?
Landline, Verizon landline revenues. So we're stymied. We have $3 million in National Grid monies to proceed, and National Grid will proceed with the project bringing it through the center of town, towards the library if you were to go from here. However, National Grid will not proceed because National Grid would receive less than $75,000 per year for what's a multi-million-dollar investment. And so the problem is we're stymied because National Grid will proceed. Verizon is basically shut off the project because they don't see the economic return.
Oh, so it's Verizon that doesn't get enough
yeah,
money.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Verizon doesn't have enough money.
National Grid can charge the
National Grid's fine.
ratepayers.
In fact, we shut off the ratepayers because we had over $3 million in the account.
Yeah.
The problem is Verizon cannot proceed because the funding source in the state law, which is dated, obviously it was enacted prior to wireless phones.
Right.
Is a pittance. And so that's why we're stymied, and we don't know how to get around that roadblock, other than Verizon saying to the town, we'll come up with another
But
funding source.
here's what Verizon could do. The name of this committee that I chair is Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. And there's a obscure reason that has to do with Congress, actually, why telecommunications and electric and gas utilities are in one group. That's true at the national level also. Verizon could file legislation, but hasn't. If the problem is somehow that it's prevented by virtue of state law from recovering its costs the way utilities can recover their costs, which is to say by charging us, Verizon could submit legislation which would effectively give it additional revenue sources committable to projects like Chelmsford Center. But Verizon has not submitted legislation. I would have seen it. It would have come before my committee. I would have been because I would have heard from you, Paul. I would have been extremely interested in it. The utilities are very Eversource and National Grid and Unitel are before us with legislative provisions all the time. Verizon, not so much. And we can't do anything if no one asks us to do something. Verizon has not asked us to change their revenue picture. I would be interested in hearing from the utility, from Verizon in this case, so that we could get these cables underground.
So they would have to submit it basically on behalf of us?
It could be somebody in Chelmsford. It could be business. It could be citizens. It could be municipal government. Someone has to come up with a formula that would permit Verizon to finance this project. Now, all these companies recover it from their customers, so it's not magic money. Ultimately, we pay, but Verizon has not come forward with a proposal, so I have nothing to go on. I don't have the capacity to figure out Verizon's funding and financial challenges for it. That's something that would have to come from from the public at large, and then we would evaluate what was proposed to us.
Okay, I mean, that might be an option we could take. I don't know how we would know their funding sources either, maybe from the Department of Public Utilities. Would they be able to?
No, Verizon knows this business. They have 10 times the staff
But they have to
of the
want to
DPU.
do it.
And
Yes.
why would they want to do it? It's
Yeah,
not
right.
beneficial to them
Not
to do
beneficial.
it.
Well, but it's
so-
not-
Well, that may be the problem.
That's the
Right.
problem.
It's not that the state's holding them back.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that
well,
they
it's the law.
don't want to do it.
Yes.
Well, we can't help
But you're-
Verizon decide.
Yeah, but they would recover all of these funds in one way or another.
Right, but the state holds the law that allows the recovery, and it comes only from landlines. And that's where the law is dated.
Right.
I'm saying no one's come to me and asked to change that law.
Okay.
I suspect that they know what they're doing.
Of course
They
they-
haven't come to us for a reason. It's not up to the state government. It's up to people petitioning their legislature for relief and for a change. And they haven't petitioned the legislature for relief and for a change.
But you're saying we can petition the legislature
Anybody,
to
yes,
enforce,
but
to
you just need
force
to
them
have a
do
lawyer
that.
to, well, first of all, you need somebody who knows finances in this area to say, aha, this is the key that would unlock the financing so that we could get these cables underground. So you need someone shrewd enough about cable financing and telephone financing to propose the change. And then my committee could take a look at it. We would get testimony from Chelmsford officials. We would get testimony from residents, hear from other people around the state. But no one's come to us and asked for a change of state law. And I would need to hear from someone who had an idea.
Okay, so we need to come up with an idea. All right, we'll work on that.
Thank you. Excellent.
Okay, is there anything else anybody would like to bring up in the next 2 or 3 minutes?
I would just say, do they have anything they want to, like, you've got 2 months left in session. What do you foresee, or what are you excited about in terms of what may come out in the next 2 months? I mean, give you a chance to
Well, I think
come
there's
this
going to
way.
be a housing bill, one hopes, of some kind, leaving aside the question of the contents. I hope there's going to be an economic development bill that would focus on moving businesses. I take the point of our neighbor here. All the business growth should not be in Kendall Square and the Seaport. It should be out on 495. So economic development bill, half of it is clean technology, green technology, lots of jobs. UMass Lowell is going gangbusters in terms of the research. Now we need to get the money into the hands of startups in Greater Lowell, of which there are many. So I'd like to see the economic development bill with the funding for climate tech included. Another $1 billion is for life sciences,
IT.
to renew life sciences, which is a critical piece, again, very important to this area. I want to see a climate bill. It is likely that we're going to see a major climate bill. We've seen the major bills in the last 2 sessions. This time the focus is on funding electric power infrastructure, right? Because we need to completely redo the grid, the wires, ideally some of them underground, both to take electrons away from solar panels on roofs, but also to deliver it to heat pumps and to EV chargers. You've got to remake the entire electric wiring system, or we're not going to avert climate change. So this is the governor's focus. I think it's enormous interest to the House and to the Senate, and even in the 60 days we have left, I believe we will get through another major climate bill.
Okay, we'll be looking forward to that.
Municipal Empowerment Act? You think the problem is you're running out of time. And I
Problem
think,
is we're running out of time. I mean, throw in some, the Senator described the major bills. I mean, there's a numerous, other bills, whether it's, we've got to finish hospital and healthcare reform that the House
Yeah.
passed. And then we've got to squeeze in the FY25 budget at some point in time.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. So I think it will be we're running out of time, but I think we have some long days that will be in session, rightfully so. And yeah.
Well, we definitely appreciate you coming.
Excuse me, Pat.
Sure.
We usually just talk about the next one.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say we'd
I don't know
get
if,
in touch with them in about
Representative
not 6
Cataldo's
months.
office
Yeah.
has anything to add on the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks?
Nothing else to cover. I think covered all the bases there.
Yeah, so we will be back in touch in a few months to set something up probably early November. in
I
that
really
time.
appreciate these sessions, and so thank you for having us.
It was a great discussion. I appreciate it.
thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you for the earmarks and everything else you do to support the community.
Yeah, let's hear it for those
wait.
earmarks.
We
Nobody
really
wants
do.
to talk about those.
We really do appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is reports and presentations. First is Fire Chief Ryan to talk about PFAS-free firefighting equipment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Good evening, board members. Good evening, Mr. Manager. Hope everyone is doing well, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come before the board to talk about firefighter turnout gear. Hopefully, this is a less controversial topic. Certainly, I think we'll do it quicker. I believe the last time I was here, May 6th, Weston and Sampson was doing an update, a presentation on PFAS for 54 Richardson Road. And Weston and Sampson's engineer, Paul McKinley, was describing PFAS and how prevalent PFAS is in everyday items. That also includes firefighter turnout gear, unfortunately. And up until now, so the very gear that is designed to protect our members, unfortunately, is also exposing them to the PFAS chemicals. But up until now, we did not have a viable alternative. So recently, our vendor, Northeast Rescue, approached us, the department, the union's Health and Safety Committee, with a different option, a PFAS-free option. I have sent the quote from Northeast Rescue for this PFAS-free gear. The union, I believe, has sent a letter of support, so my thanks to them for looking at the gear. So what I am respectfully requesting is to fund one set of this gear for each of our members, 61 members, for a total cost of $252,688. In the submittal that I provided, you have the quote, and is a cut sheet as well, with the floral surfactants removed from the liner, the interior liner of the gear. And I will try to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Sure.
So how long will this gear, what's its useful life?
So the gear, under the codes, we typically try to replace gear, turnout gear, every 10 years.
So it's expected that this would last 10 years, the PFAS-free also?
Right now, yes. But as I say this, the NFPA is doing a major revision, and they may, I don't know this, but they may take that 10 years and cut it down. That's something being contemplated.
Okay.
So, but right now, the standard is 10 years. That is something we are trying to, we actually been pretty effective at changing the gear out every 10 years.
Okay, and how is it clean? Is it clean like your gear that you use now?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
same process.
Okay, and how long would, if we were to approve this, how long would it take before you would get the gear?
If you were to approve it, we would call the vendor in, and it's getting a little difficult because the summer months are coming up. But they will come in quickly. They will size all of our members. Once everybody is sized, it's my understanding it will be up to 8 weeks before we will see the gear.
Okay, so could be within a couple months.
Yes,
anyway,
correct.
or thereabouts. Okay. Anybody else have questions?
Gary, so the PFAS exposure comes from chemicals that the firefighters are exposed to along the way, and this gear is made to resist that or protect the men better. It's
Because of the repellents that are built in, yes.
The current gear has PFAS in it, doesn't it?
It does,
Right.
that is correct, because of repellent. It's also, rain gear and other things, and.
Okay,
yep.
yeah. That answers my question.
Just to give a perspective, normally a request like this, we would consider with other requests, fall town meeting and so forth. This is such a health concern that when Chief Ryan made me aware that this was available, we had him come as soon as possible, and the only immediate funding source that we have is the ARPA funds. And speaking to Christine Clancy, who, as you know, reports monthly on this, she believes at this point, as a result of the additional bidding, some of which will come tonight, we probably have now upwards to about $800,000 available. So if you were to fund this $250,000, we're still in a very comfortable position, to close out what we have, as well as to consider other projects that we talked about at a previous meeting later this summer. Again, it was really the extraordinary health issue with this in terms of the PFAS that is what brought us to here tonight for this special consideration. And I just, to me, if we can avoid 6 more months of exposure to them, then the better it is, and therefore I just think it warrants a sort of the exceptional consideration, and that's why we're here this evening.
So Paul, when you reference the ARPA funds, the coming up on the bid awards, the Pendleton Road stream cleaning, we had 240
Yep.
allocated to that, and the bid is 105. So
Right.
is that like 135 we get
Exactly,
back?
exactly.
Okay, so that's not just a for part of the project.
right.
And then, Chief, I just had I guess I missed 61 because it said 52 firefighters, 7 captains.
52 firefighters, 7
And then there's
captains,
another line that
and chief
adds
and
2
deputy
chief officers. So that's like roughly 4,200 per firefighter for gear. I was just curious, how does that compare to what we pay for gear?
So the,
firefighter today.
so in front of me, the quote, so the jacket is over 2,000. It's actually more expensive for the black.
I just took 252,688 and divided by 61.
Yeah, so it's a little more expensive actually, it's more expensive for the, everybody else, because they wear the black jackets. The white jackets that the chief and the deputy chief are a little cheaper. So that's just 2,200. They're 2,300, and we all wear the same pants, black, sometimes different stripes. Those are 1,800. So that's the breakout.
So how does it compare to the conventional?
Oh, it compares
Yeah,
to
that's my-
conventionally,
that's my
yes. To
question.
answer your question, yes, it is a little more expensive,
Okay.
yes.
Did you say, are we nearing, what's the lifespan for the conventional uniforms?
So
Or
for the
conventional
turnout gear,
also?
we keep them for 10 years. We have to
And
do
are we
inspect.
nearing, do we normally buy them
We
all
not-
at once
we-
for the
we
whole
al- we normally have
department?
2 sets because you want to have a backup set and an alternate set.
But do we normally, is this like in every 10 years, we buy a whole new
So
set?
we're coming
for
up to the end of a 10 years. So we
Okay,
back,
so
whether
we're
it's
there
grant
anyways.
funds or capital back in 2015.
Yeah.
So we're actually coming up to most of the department would have to get replaced. So we're actually going to be doing it probably.
I didn't know if it was something that was kind of happening on a rolling cycle.
Like if somebody
or-
was hired 2 years ago,
So
they
there
still
are
get
some
new
because they
gear?
get hired, so there is some gaps in there. It does.
Generally speaking, every 10
But
years
it's,
this comes
but
up
a
and we buy new.
majority of the department is coming up next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there are some that are staggered.
Okay, are there any other questions? I think this is a good use of the ARPA funds. I don't know how everybody else feels about that. I would be fine with approving it this evening, given that we still do have some flexibility left on those funds before the end of the year, so,
I like it.
You need a motion.
yeah, we need a motion.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay, I wasn't ready. I will make a motion to approve the Chief Ryan's request for PFAS-free turnout gear as presented,
With the funding source
with
being
the
the ARPA
fundings
monies. Yeah.
coming from the ARPA monies.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Certainly, on behalf of the Chelmsford firefighters, I'm very happy, very thankful. Thank you to the town manager. When I went to discuss this with him, I was thinking more towards the fall, towards capital, so I am very thankful that you made this happen. Thank you.
No brainer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an easy one. Okay, next on our agenda is the Conservation Commission, Warren Poe Conservation Restriction. We are going to defer that agenda topic to our next meeting, as they've discovered they had a few minor adjustments they need to make to that document. So we move right on to Town Manager Bid Awards.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, I have 4 procurement awards, all pertaining to Public Works tonight. Although it's 3 documents, it's 4 awards. The first one is for Chelmsford Public Schools Electrification Roadmap Study. You may recall this was an earmark that was provided because it kept getting the repeated lightning strikes. And so the proposal was bid. The proposal that was received was from Hewicks LLC with an amount not to exceed $75,000, which conforms to the funding for this project. So that's the first one. Do you want me to do them all, or do you want to do individually? What's the preference, Madam Chair?
Anybody have a preference? I guess I'm okay with doing them all at once.
Okay,
if you
all right.
wanna-
The next one was for the Chelmsford High School Kitchen Improvements Owner's Project Manager Services. This is basically the town's designation person on site to oversee that construction project. It's required. This was was bid by a request for proposals, where the DPW Evaluation Committee reviewed the qualifications of the bidders. The bidders know the project amount for the site work that's going to take place with the kitchen improvements. The recommendation is to award the contract to Left Field with an amount not to exceed $50,000. which again is the project for that.
What did we budget?
We budgeted, I believe we budgeted $60,000 for project manager services, and so the amount was 50. The Pendleton Road cleaning project is an ARPA project. DPW bid this. One bid was received from GVC Construction in the amount of $105,000. Fortunately, they have many references for similar projects, and the DPW is confident, and again, I seek your confirmation of the bid award to GVC Construction for that project. And then the last one is for the South Row Lightning Protection System for McDonald Electrical in the amount of $62,920. Again, positive references, it meets the budget, and we're seeking the confirmation. What you're seeing here is two things. One is we're fortunate that we're coming within the funding amounts. The challenge is that what you're seeing is still very, very thin bidding field for these projects, which is disappointing. We're still seeing the remnants, and what it is, and we're seeing the same story repeatedly, is people will say, we can do the work, but we can't get to you for 6 months to a year, and generally. And so what you're seeing here is the DPW aggressively going out and making contacts, outreaching to people to bid on these projects. And obviously we bring them to you when they come in, but we much like the pre-COVID days, we'd come in and say, we had 5 people bid, 3 of the bids were around this amount. One's an outlier. We're here bringing you what we have. Again, fortunately, the references are good, the work is good, and I think part of what helps us, I think the reputation of doing work for the Chelmsford Public Works is good. So I think you have people who come in and saying, hey, look, I've got choices of where I'm going to do projects, private or public sector. And in the public sector, the town of Chelmsford has a good reputation in terms of, they're prepared for you, they get you in, they get you out. And don't underestimate the importance of that, because it's like anything else. If you don't have the reputation, you don't have the cooperative relationship where your reputation precedes you, this doesn't happen, and then we're in a real bad spot. So again, I present those 4 awards, and I want to thank Christine Clancy and her division heads and others down there who are moving these things forward, because something like the OPM for the kitchen project, if we don't have an OPM, that project isn't going to meet the timetable that's needed for the high school, and so forth. So again, I respectfully seek your award for these 4 projects.
So on the South Road, the lightning protection, when will that happen, like over the summer? Or?
The hope is to have it done by the end of the calendar year. My guess is, in talking to Christine, it's probably going to spill into the spring. Okay. But that's okay. I mean, we've been in touch with our legislative, coordinators and state agencies, and they say, as long as you get this project done within the upcoming fiscal year, you'll be okay. Because we've been reassessing all of our projects with the deadlines that have come up, and so we're okay with this. But unfortunately, some of these things are going to have to wait the 6 months, 9 months to get them done.
Okay. Any other questions about any of these bids? Okay, we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the town manager bid awards as presented, to include the Chelmsford Public Schools Electrification Roadmap Study and Chelmsford High School Kitchen Improvements Project, the Pendleton Road Stream Cleaning ARPA Project, and the South Row Lighting Protection System Installation.
Lightning protection.
Lightning Protection System Installation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a report.
Yeah, just a brief report. And this has to do with the air quality from the quarries. You heard about it earlier in the comments into open session. And I want to thank our public health department in the town of Westford, who really has been the lead on this. And they forwarded the information through our local board of health, Sue Roser and Donna Greenwood, and then brought it to my attention. The important and good news here is the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection is regulating the quarry emissions. As you know, there have been concerns about particulates emanating from the quarry activities. And so they're now requiring air quality permits of all the 3 sites, and the 3 sites being the Newport Aggregates, Graniteville Materials, and Graves Granite. sites. And I guess most importantly of concern is there still will be an opportunity for public comment for the Newport Aggregates proposed permit. And so in the packet, if people who are watching at home and what have you, a lot of the pages are to the consent order with Graniteville materials, but at the back of those materials and in your packet, you can see that Newport Aggregate has submitted to the state the environmental justice fact sheet. And that was, they submitted an application online on April 16th, 2024. Mass DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, is reviewing their application. And once that application is administratively and technically complete, a draft permit will be issued, and then the public comment period begins. And then the public comment period lasts for 30 days after it begins. And therefore, if there's any questions that come up to that time, there's the contact information for the Mass DEP. So we know this was a concern. I know members of this board raised a concern that you'd heard from residents and travelers to the area about the dust and the emissions coming from that site. So again, the state in this instance has stepped forward and is requiring, air quality permits and hopefully improve the activities out there from not having an adverse impact on the abutting residents and properties.
Paul, how do we or the public know when the permit is filed and the draft permit is released and the public comment period begins?
I expect that we will receive notice, and as soon as I do it, we'll put it out on the news flash. We'll obviously notify the select board and the community about the Newport permit being active. So we will stay on this meeting. Our Board of Health, I meet with the health inspector and the other inspectors and public safety officials once a week. And this is on our list in terms of, where are we at with this project. So we'll keep you updated at this table, but also we'll put it out quickly on the internet and the website.
So go ahead.
It's okay. There was the comment in public input about potential radioactive material, but I also got input, if you recall, when we had the citizens petition. I think part of what we were measuring were chemical contaminants, not just dust.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a question raised about, is there an ability to feed that into the process at all? And I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
so
I don't know that.
Okay, thank you.
So Paul, I just noticed on the fact sheet, and it's probably not relevant, the last.
The address.
The address?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was strange too. 90 Ledge Road, North Chelmsford.
Well, no, at the very bottom, it talks about the project located in the town of Acushnet.
Yeah, my guess is that's a typo.
There was another document that had their address at 100 Lowell
Yeah.
Road or 100 Chelmsford Street in Lowell.
Yeah, okay. All right, we don't need any action on that, correct?
No.
Okay. All right, next up is annual appointments, our first shot at reappointments for folks who have indicated a desire to stay on the boards and committees that they're currently on. Anybody have any questions, concerns about this list?
My only question was there's no end date on the fire station study committee appointments.
Is it ever going to end?
Is it ever going to end?
Well, I didn't know if we should just make it like to 2026, even though it may be done in the fall.
2026?
2026?
25, I'm
25,
sorry.
okay. Yeah, okay. 30 June
Just-
25?
Yeah, just make it the minimum 1 year or whatever.
Oh, okay, so for another year.
And then if it stops earlier than that, that's fine, but we don't have to vote again if it goes longer.
30 June 25, okay.
Okay, anything else? Oh, I had a question about the constable. Is he only appointed for a year?
Yes. That's the
Okay.
provision that we have. Yeah. You remember we amended the
Yes.
the chart on it.
Right.
It's annual.
All right, I will take a motion if there's no other questions.
I'll make a motion to approve the annual appointments as presented
And as amended.
and as amended. Thank you.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, next up, we wanted to talk about discussion of council, town council and other special counsel that that we have, that this board is responsible for hiring. We did receive a letter from Attorney Paul Haverty this past week, saying that he does not wish to be renewed as town council for Chelmsford due to other commitments at his firm. So, but he's willing to stay on until as needed to bring a new town council up to speed. It's also been noted by Virginia that we do have other special counsel for labor counsel for the select board, counsel for elections, and counsel for public records. And I believe all 4 of those are handled by KP Law now, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, we can do this a couple of ways. We could see if KP Law has the resources to take us on as town council in addition to the other areas that they serve, or we could open it up to other firms. I guess my preference would be to go with KP Law. We've used them before. I was satisfied with them, and since we do use them for these other special areas, I think it almost makes sense to try to bring everything under one umbrella. That way there's less opportunity for discrepancies as far as who to call, basically. So I don't know how anybody else feels.
I'm not adverse to going out and looking at other firms. However, I have had extensive experience with KP Law myself, just through all the different projects, both administratively and from a construction law point of view. I've always found them to be top-notch and right on top of everything that we've ever needed. So I don't have a problem going either way, because I know KP Law to be an excellent firm. So, but I'm not adverse to seeking proposals either.
Okay. Anybody else?
Same.
Okay.
I have a question, like, because we don't seem to have a practice for this. For the last 2 years, somebody has brought up potential changes in either labor council or town council. And 2 years ago, I think when that was brought up, I believe it was Mark Carrata at the time had suggested that if we wanted to change council, we should allow ourselves like a sufficient amount of time to ask for proposals and do interviews and start that process in, April, May timeframe or whatever. So like in an instance like this, and then when it came up again the year after with a different council, we went back to the year before and said, we're not just going to do this on the fly in June, we'll allow ourselves time. So should we, I don't know if just from a pure, if that was our philosophy about the process, should we find out if there are any potential interested firms? From the standpoint of the other councils that we have, labor and elections and public records, I mean, I kind of feel like if it's working, I'm not sure that I'm interested in entertaining bringing somebody else in and paying them to come up to speed and, kind of make a whole new transition on the established ones. But I just didn't know, like, what is the board's practice when they change council? Because for the last 2 years, it seems to be when we had the option, we weren't going to make the decision in June. We were going to say next year, let's start it earlier.
Yeah. I know, it
And
seems.
so now do we just go point solution to one firm, or do we just take, if Attorney Haverty's willing to, stay on for a transition, do we take some time to just look at multiple proposals at our next meeting or whatever and see or do interviews? Somebody brought up interviews has been done in the past, and I'm just asking because I don't have the history with this.
Okay.
I assume the contract runs through the end of the fiscal year.
Right.
They are appointed for
appointment-
1
the
year,
appointment
June,
runs
to the end of
fiscal year.
June,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, yeah, we could do it a couple of different ways, or there's probably more than 2 different ways we could do it. If there were a sense that we wanted to go with KP Law, I could reach out to them, have them come to our next meeting, and have them give a presentation about how they would handle everything together. What they might do differently, what they would offer that maybe another firm might not. And if we were satisfied with that, we could appoint them then, if we're not, if we have some concerns, we could reach out to other firms. I suspect it's probably not unlike the way we are with accountants lately. You know, we put out an RFP and we get no responses or max 2 responses. So
Do we know if they have the capacity?
I would expect they do, but I could call tomorrow and
know.
find out if they do. I didn't want to preemptively.
No, I
They're still,
appreciate that.
they're still advertising in the Beacon for town
Yeah,
council, so
sure.
I don't
And they're dropping the town next door, so.
they
Yeah,
trust-
I
yes.
saw that.
So, I mean, if everybody would be okay with that, I'm willing to do that and have somebody come in and give us a brief presentation or submit a report about
I think
what they
that
would.
makes a lot of sense based on the fact that we're already using them in different capacities, and to bring it all under one roof could be advantageous, so I think that makes sense.
Well, yeah, a new firm would really have to come in and
Oh, yeah.
allow us somehow to convince us not to just bring it all under their umbrella, right? I don't know.
Well,
They'd have
to
have, like, a
especially,
serious
as Virginia said, to take away from the other 4 that KP Law already has,
Yeah.
you know, and I think
Oh, yeah.
it kind of makes sense to, if we can, to have them have fewer rather than more different places that we would go to.
And so the other question that I had with this is, let's just say theoretically, we make a decision on June 24th. Do we need to make any kind of formal 3-month appointment or anything for, like Attorney Haverty for the transition? Because he's got 7 years of legacy here and cases that are currently open, and I don't know that it's reasonable for us to just expect him to just do that on his own time.
I would agree. I mean, I think we need to set up a transition period. I think, you know, maybe it would be up, I can ask him also to submit
What does he
something.
think a reasonable
Yeah.
transition period
Right.
would be?
Whether that's a month or 2 months or something like that, and obviously he
That
would
would be
paid
good
for that.
information to have at our next
I think
meeting.
you'd want to ask both of them.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
you can
Current
have,
town
yeah,
council
you.
and future town
right, you-
council, what they're.
Yeah, you can have a transition, you can also have multiple councils, I mean,
Right.
which is known as special counsel.
Temporarily, right.
Yeah, to close up matters or transition matters, and,
But I would
for example.
suspect if we did it that way, it'd be on a case-by-case
Yeah,
basis.
that's how they do it. What they do is they prepare a transition report, and then in some of the matters where there's active litigation, they have to submit a notice of withdrawal and then a notice of appearance on cases and so forth. And so, you know, so that's,
Right,
so for
right.
example, we've got the claim on Charles Way, for example. You know, if Attorney Haverty files a response, which he will because it's timely, then what happens is he then files a notice, you know, with the court and the other counsel saying, I'm withdrawing as counsel, and then KP Law says we're now, you know, appearing as counsel for this, and that's how the transition goes out. Exactly. But if there's an ongoing case, like with the Board of Appeals, that's, you know, part of the 5th hearing, and they've got to wrap it up in August, then
You may wanna
they
hold on to 'em,
discontinue
yeah.
as special counsel and close that out, because you're not going to, you know, so basically it's done on an individual basis. The good news is as a community, we don't have a heavy litigation load, so it's you know, it shouldn't be too onerous on anybody's part.
So Attorney Haverty's firm and the new counsel firm would get together and then come
Exactly.
to us and say,
Yep.
this is like how we recommend.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
very
I
good.
expect that.
Okay, all right, so that will be our plan. Okay, we have one set of meeting minutes. Anybody have any comments or corrections on the minutes as presented? If not, we can have a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Select Board regular meeting minutes of May 6, 2024, as presented.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, we are now to Selectmen liaison reports and referrals. George, anything? Okay, Pat?
Just quickly on the North Chelmsford Fire Station, we did meet with the contractor a week ago, 2 weeks ago, Wednesday. They have agreed to our proposals and the materials that we wanted to use. So that material has lead times associated with it, so we're expecting the work to start right after Labor Day holiday and be completed in about 6 to 8 weeks once they start. But we're currently awaiting submittals and cut sheets to make sure that the products are meet our approval, and then we will turn them loose to go ahead and order that, and that will all be done at no fee to the town, and we'll have a new siding on that building by the fall.
Okay, very good. Erin? Virginia?
I just had a question, Paul. We had received a letter for public input from Christine Bowman that I shared with you about early morning trash pickups
Yep.
before 7 a.m. And she had said that she can't be here tonight. So is that something you guys can look at?
I've already shared it with the police chief, public works director, and zoning enforcement officer, and so we'll get on that. And again, I'll follow up on Wednesday. Again, is my weekly meeting time to get moving on that.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I just have a few things. First of all, thanks to everybody who came to the Memorial Day Parade last week. It was a good day, a good parade. We have a bunch of little kids marching with us. That was
You're
nice.
welcome.
So thanks to everybody who came for that. Congratulations to the Chelmsford High seniors and the Neshoba graduating seniors. They both graduated both sets of them graduated last Saturday. So congratulations to them. A good day again for both events. So congratulations. And congratulations to Paul last week for receiving an award from Community Teamwork as a champion of community action. Do you want to talk about that at all?
No, I just
No.
thank the people who really made it possible, which were all the department heads and first responders in the community who, really it's nice that Community Teamwork recognized the efforts that Chelmsford has had in serving those in need, particularly at the shelter facility on Chelmsford Street.
Okay. And I have one more thing. So I hope I do this right. This morning I went to a funeral for a gentleman who lived across the street from me. His name was George DePrimio. And as part of the service, his son, talked a little bit about his father and, said what a great guy he was, how helpful he was, and, how talented he was. And he also commented about his father's sense of humor. He always had a joke for everything. And he had one joke that was his favorite. So the son told us today as we left the service that we had to repeat this joke at some point today. So I'm going to try to do this joke. So this is the George DePrimio favorite joke. Okay, so there's this mouse that dies and he goes to heaven. And as he's at the gates, he looks through the gates and he says, "Wow, that's a huge place. How am I ever going to get around that place?" And so St. Peter says, "Well, we have a set of roller skates for you. That'll help you get around." He said, "Well, that's perfect. That'll really help me." So the mouse goes off and rolls around heaven. The next day, a cat dies and comes up to the heaven's gates, and looks in and sees this mouse rolling around on their roller skates. And he says to St. Peter, "I think I'm really going to like it here. You have Meals on Wheels." So rest in peace, George DePrimio. That's all I have. I'll have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.